Hey everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the rest of November in today's video, starting with the next week's 10 days, and then looking at the rest of the month with the CFS V2 model. We're in a technically mild air mass at the moment, but it has turned a bit colder actually on the surface, and we have these fog problems. We've had a bit of an inversion taking place over the past day or so, which means it's been colder on the surface than it is aloft. That's what created a lot of the fog issues, and it does feel fairly chilly. Most of those fog problems are going away rapidly now though, and we're going to start stirring up the atmosphere a little bit over the next day or so, just bringing a few showery bursts of rain through and also increasing the wind a bit, and that will allow the milder upper air temperatures in the atmosphere to penetrate down onto the surface. So it should start feeling a bit milder over the next day or two, but it looks like it's turning increasingly unsettled. Now, I did the November month ahead forecast yesterday, and that was sort of going for milder than average temperatures, but very unsure about the precipitation. I'm still fairly happy with the temperature side of things, but in terms of the rainfall, we could be already starting to shift towards a more unsettled and wetter pattern for November. So we'll have a look at all the detail on it in a moment, but before I get on with that, just very quick to say about the ads. There's links to articles on all pages at GazWeatherBits. Have a browse through widgets and click through the links, and thanks very much for doing that. Gaz Shop is open, so if you've got any Christmas shopping to do at Amazon between now and Christmas, just click through the Amazon banners in Gaz Shop. There's also a search widget, but click through the Amazon banners and it'll take you off to Amazon. Of course, you're going from GazWeatherBits to Amazon, we get a revenue fee on the things that you're purchasing, so you don't have to do anything different at all. Just click through the banners, and by doing that, you're helping to pay for GazWeatherBits. So thanks very much for doing that, and happy shopping if that's what you want to do later. Talking of Christmas, we're going to be doing a new Christmas update this evening. Did the first one on Sunday, that's quite an interesting one. Going to do another one this evening, the second update, and then there'll probably be another one on Thursday, and then over the weekend. So we're going to do it every 2 or 3 nights, something like that, with CFS V2, just to monitor what it's showing, and over time we should get trends and patterns emerging, but I'll have more on that this evening when we do the second Christmas update. Right, let's get on with the video, and we've got a centering temperature here from Hadley. So October's number is in. It came out at 11.0, which is an anomaly of just 0.4 of a degree above average, so it's a bit milder than average, but not by much, and it just carries on the trend of the year, really, with most of the months this year coming out either a little bit above or a little bit below average. So January was 0.6 above average, February 0.3, March 0.7. Our biggest anomaly was in April, when we was 1.1 of a degree above average, and then May came out a little bit below average, 0.4, June a little bit below average, 0.2, July virtually bang on average, just 0.1 of a degree below average, August 0.1 of a degree above average, and then September was a significantly colder than average month, coming out at 1 degree below average. So October has carried on this trend of being within a degree or so of the average, this time just 0.4 degree above average. And of course, November, we've already got the first couple of days worth of data in for November. We stand provisionally at 10.2, an anomaly of 1.2 degrees above average. You'd probably expect that to be a bit warmer than that, but as I said, been a lot of fog around. Have this inversion that's lowered the temperatures as well, so not running all that high in terms of central temperature at this point. It's probably going to tick down for today, and then it may pick back up again through the rest of the week. So here is the graph that shows the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles, dealing with the temperatures first of all. Now we're significantly above average. Say these are upper air temperatures, so the red line here is the 30-year temperature average. We are significantly above average, going to be staying significantly above average into the second week of the month at least. The dates are on the bottom of the chart, so this is the 15th of November, just here, middle part of the month. You can see we are in a mild air mass, but as I say, it's been cooler on the surface than it has in the upper atmosphere. Now, I think we're going to stir the atmosphere up a little bit, as I say, over the next day or two, so that should start to reflect the mildness of the upper atmosphere a little bit more. It will start to feel a bit milder over the next day or two. It's going to be staying mild through the weekend and into next week. We do have a bit of a cooling trend, though, in the middle part of the month. This section just here. Now, this is a long way off. It's in the unreliable time frame, but you can definitely see there's a downwards trend going on there, going back to the 30-year temperature average. So a bit of a cooling trend after a very mild sort of first week to 10 days is the idea with the model at the moment. Now, these rainfall spikes are really ramping up. So, as I say, we are shifting towards a more unsettled and slightly wetter pattern. So, well, already starting from tomorrow, around this zone just here, sort of 4th to 5th of November. And after that, we just keep these spikes coming. So, all of a sudden, we've developed into quite a wet and unsettled pattern. This could be going a bit over the top. I'm not sure it's going to be quite this wet. High pressure is still not going to be all that far from the south and southeast, but it does certainly look like we are moving towards a wetter pattern as we're going through, particularly next week. I think there could be quite a lot of heavy rain in places. This is the GFS for Saturday, and you notice high pressure is still relatively close to us over the continent, but the Atlantic is definitely picking up. The jet stream is ramping up a little bit. We've got low pressure to the north of Scotland. We've got low pressure in the central part of the Atlantic. There's probably a weather front strung out, sort of connecting these areas of low pressure going well out into the Atlantic as well. So we get a drier start and then another low pressure comes through, a drier start and another low pressure, that kind of pattern. As we move through into Sunday, well, low pressure is really deep into the north of Scotland, so this looks quite significant for Sunday. Could bring gale force winds through Northern Ireland and Scotland Saturday into Sunday. This is midnight Sunday, and those isobars are very tightly packed, so gales, possibly severe gales in the north. Have to keep an eye out for that. It could be going a bit over the top, but we do need to keep a watch on that for Scotland over the weekend. As we move through into the start of next week, again, high pressure is trying to reach to the south, but this area of low pressure to the south of Greenland is deepening like mad, and that just sweeps in, and the high pressure gets flattened off as we go through into Tuesday. This is a very westerly, very zonal setup developing into next week. Again, it is quite windy. There'll be a risk of gales in the north, and probably quite an active cold front coming across the country, bringing a band of heavy rain as well. And then we stay firmly locked into an unsettled pattern through the course of next week. This takes us up to day 10, Friday the 13th of November, and low pressure is very, very close to the country, out to the northwest. Again, high pressure isn't all that far away, but it's generally across southern and the eastern parts of Europe, and in the northwest it does look significantly more unsettled. Now, pressure is beginning to rise a little bit around Greenland and through the central part of the Atlantic by this middle part of the month, which starts to force this trough southwards. So we do start to pull down the temperatures. We saw that cooling trend with the GFS ensembles. That's happening because this trough is being shifted southwards as pressure begins to rise to the north and the west of the country. We're going a very long way out now, and this is right at the very end of the GFS run, 384 hours away on Thursday the 19th of November, and by that point high pressure is beginning to rise over Scandinavia, possibly trying to get winds back into the east. But it certainly looks significantly more unsettled over the weekend and into next week. Now, the E70F isn't as bad as this in terms of unsettled conditions. So on Saturday, again, pressure's relatively high to the south, but we have got these areas of low pressure to the north and west of the country. There's that low pressure running to the north of Scotland Saturday into Sunday. It isn't as deep on the E70F as it is on the GFS, so the risk of severe gales isn't as great with this. Nevertheless, it does need keeping an eye on because it could be deeper than this suggests, as the GFS wants to do, and that will give Scotland quite a battering Saturday into Sunday. Then high pressure tries to ridge back up from the south as we go through to the start of next week, and we keep high pressure relatively close to England and Wales actually through into the middle part of next week. So whereas the GFS was trying to really flatten this ridge off and bring in a strong Atlantic flow through, actually the ECM keeps that ridge very close to southern parts of the country, and the unsettled conditions are generally away to the north and the west. By day 10, which is Friday the 13th of November, again, which is very close, but it is being flattened a little bit as low pressure tries to roll in. Generally, the east end of the Earth is not as unsettled as the GFS today for next week's weather. And have a look at the GEM, the Canadian model. We see that on Saturday, again, in an unsettled westerly flow to the north and west. Pressure's trying to stay high down to the south and the southeast. That storm system doesn't really develop Saturday into Sunday, so not too bad in terms of gale force winds. The GFS could be going a bit over the top with these westerlies for the weekend and next week. As we go through next week, though, the GEM does bring the Atlantic through, so that's in agreement with the GFS. Actually, it's a very complicated scene, this, trying to make sense of it all. But the GEM is more unsettled for next week, bringing the Atlantic through. And we finish up on day 10, the 13th of November, again with low pressure very much around the country. So we've got agreement from the GFS and the GEM for weather to be turning more unsettled, particularly next week. They don't really agree on the risk of severe gales in the north over the weekend, but we'll keep an eye on it. The E70F, though, is much more settled for next week, keeping that high pressure ridging down to the south of the country. But I think the general trend is shifting more to unsettled and wetter conditions for this November. I think that is the general direction the models are going in. This is the CFS V2, and these are 500 millimetre heights broken down into weekly periods for the next month. The first week period going from the 3rd through to the 9th of November, so the week that we're in. Pretty good reflection of the pattern at the moment. High pressure generally away to the east across most parts of Europe. Low pressure in the Atlantic. Jet stream is going like that. So we're bringing up a mild flow. But as we've already explained on the surface, it has been a bit colder. But we're going to stir things up in terms of the atmosphere over the next day or two. But over time, this high pressure gradually being eroded by low pressure from the Atlantic. The next week, the 10th through to the 16th of November, this is probably a transitional period. We find the high pressure going further south into southern parts of Europe as this low pressure begins to push back in, begins to move a jet stream into the country. So probably starting off a bit settled in the south and then turning more unsettled from the north and the west. And then week 3, 17th to 23rd of November, we are firmly in an unsettled pattern then. We've got below average heights right next to the country. The ridge has gone down into the south and southeast of Europe. The jet stream is coming through like that. So the jet is back. We've got an area of low pressure, a trough of low pressure. It's very unsettled, and there'd be showers or longer spells of rain most definitely. We could also be entrenching a little bit of colder air into that trough from the north and the northwest. So some wintry precipitation couldn't be ruled out on that sort of setup actually, particularly to the north. And then the final week, which is the 24th through to the 30th of November, so right to the end of the month, keeps it unsettled. Pressure is high away to the east, so through southern Europe and into the east and northeast Europe, but we are close to this trough of low pressure. Again, the jet stream coming through the country, so it's unsettled. It's perhaps a little bit milder than the week before, but it's still very unsettled, and there'd be showers or longer spells of rain very close to the UK. So, well, quite suddenly actually, we are shifting towards more unsettled ideas for November. We're starting off very mild, and we will reflect that mildness a little bit more than we have done yesterday and today. We'll start to reflect it a little bit more through the rest of this week. Staying mild through the weekend and into next week, but over time turning more unsettled, and those temperatures probably starting to lower as we go towards the middle part of the month. that's all for now. Doing the Christmas update, the second one this evening, and then tomorrow it's a 5-day forecast. So come back for all of the updates, and that's it for now. Thanks for watching.